See,
Good
it's
to
not
go.
230. It's 210.
That's right.
Caleb Brown.
And it's not two anything. It's fucking 5'11". You don't need
I miss.
your communist time zone here.
I was slightly less communist, and I actually kind of liked it. Yeah, it was a good way to be for a brief time.
This is about, by the way, this layoff is within like plus or minus like 2 days of me finally calming down over listening to you compare fucking soccer players to exalting fucking soccer players. I can't. I'm starting to get. We can't even go down the road. I'm starting to get anger goosebumps. It's not a bit. I had to sit there because in front of Tho, I just had to sort of like kind of just swallow it. But like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting goosebumps everywhere just thinking about how incredible that was.
For anybody who doesn't know,
okay, yeah.
So what was the what I can't remember the exact context of it, but basically the idea was I said something about how soccer players are perhaps the best athletes of any sport.
I don't think there was a perhaps. Have you even been around anybody who like definitely like not even like, man, I almost made it, but someone who is just like, man, I wasn't even close to making the NFL. Those motherfuckers are crazy. And like that person is like the most incredible specimen you've ever been around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then just but to think it's just like, oh yeah, Leo Messi, he's a
Well, so to me, being an athlete isn't just about physically overpowering people.
Okay.
It's also about coordination and speed and being able to think and plan.
Have you seen celebration dances in the NFL?
that's very coordinated. Yeah, I used to work with. I worked for a moving company in Seattle, and there was a couple of different players who had spent time on the Seahawks. There were a couple of them were like cult heroes in the local area, so everybody knew them there. But they weren't top of the roster guys. They were definitely down. They were the types of guys you're talking about, the ones who couldn't quite make the cut, and they were absolutely just like staggering. But I've also been around Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and that guy is unquestionably one of the best athletes in the history of sports.
Oh yeah,
and he's a soccer player.
Yeah. It's my cousin.
What?
It's my cousin.
Yeah. That's what I figured. You guys all y'all look alike. I figured y'all know each other. What's up, people? I am back. I disappeared for a while, but I was actually. It was for a good cause. I was spending time with Mark Egan in Texas, and it was great to meet him in person. Let me get these comments opened up here.
I haven't run it by Matthew, but I know he's going to agree. To make it up to all the fans, we'll be streaming every single day for the next 2 weeks.
I was actually thinking about how I want to stream more often. Like I want to talk about stuff more often because we were just kind of talking
happening fast. Yeah.
Yeah. We were kind of talking just before the show about where we're at right now. And both of us are starting to feel, I don't know if you call it like a sense of urgency, or just I don't know. It's like things are accelerating, and we're it's very clear now that we're going somewhere, that this isn't just going to be kind of a bump in the road, and then that there's actually some shit that's going to go down. And
we were the bump in the road to a certain. We were part of a bump in the road.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. We've got a lot to talk about here, so let's do a little bit of housekeeping and get things caught up. This monitor is just driving me crazy right now. All right, so we're closing that. And what's up, Mark?
Do you want to get whacked out enough to say some crazy shit like soccer players are the better athletes than NFL players? Well, You, my friend, need to go to palomaverdecbd.com and peruse their section, their
wares.
selection of fucking fentanyl injected. No, I don't know. There's nothing that could be responsible for that. I mean, some kind of brain injury maybe. But if you like strawberry lemonade, there's some gum and some nice, calm, refreshing effects of CBD in the texture of a gummy. Do autistic people tend to like the textures of gummies, or is that like a no texture? Do we know?
I don't know. I haven't asked.
Well, depending on your texture preferences, they've got gummies, they've got not gummies, soft gels, they got all kinds of things over there. Things you can rub on your milky thighs. But for me, strawberry lemonade gummies at palomaverdecbd.com. Not the only product they have, but just Uncle Stevie Boy's personal favorite.
Amy says yes, and Amy happens to be about as close as you could get to an expert on the idiosyncratic preferences of autistic people.
I was going to actually have you ask Amy, but I wasn't sure if she was around.
Yeah, but, she's my beloved bride. She's in the chat with us.
But there you go. You want to get a nice strawberry lemonade flavor, and for your sore muscles, you want to rub up that salve and just massage it in delicately to your milky thighs. palomaverdecbd.com is the place for you. Use promo code KING at checkout for 25% off.
Brilliant. Mm-hmm. I actually got to spend some time with Carlos on our trip. So okay, so I'll tell you guys what happened. So I didn't expect to. I have to apologize to everybody for just kind of disappearing there, especially to Steven. Poor Steven was withering on the vine as I just suddenly disappeared and stopped replying to messages and
sexually.
Yeah. We have conversations that you guys don't know about. So
you want to know you know who you need to apologize to? I'll tell you right now. Charlemagne is who you need to apologize to because when we weren't around to do the fucking show,
you had to let it out somehow.
I had to let it out somehow. And actually, I'll tell you something, not to completely cut you off, but I'm going to do it anyway. I realized that I've been feeling much more annoying lately, and I asked, I did kind of a survey among people who, and I just, when I get like this, is something going to happen? And the consensus was, just kind of when things are going well for you, you tend to get more annoying. And so, and things haven't been going better for me. Not in no small part to our supporting listeners, I will say, and Mr. Jason Stapleton. I'm not going to get into it, but yes, I've been refocused in terms of my efforts, and things are going better. But that little urge to be annoying didn't really go anywhere, and I couldn't get out on the show. And I saw that Charlemagne, who I've always kind of been just fascinated by. It's Charlemagne. It's your fucking fault, that you don't let people see your face or whatever, and use the avatar only and stuff like that. So you're creating a mystery. You're creating interest. And I saw that he liked some post about just kind of pointing out that circumcision was sort of a fucked up thing. And I took it upon myself to pretty much daily inquire about whether he was circumcised or not. Never really talked to him before.
And he didn't block you.
No, I don't know how I'm not mute. He was talking about how certain people were annoying on the internet, and how he realized that you can, and he calls Twitter a website, which is my fucking favorite thing in the world. Oh God, I love it. I don't know if it's ironic. I can't get a beat on the motherfucker. And like usually I have people figured out pretty quickly. At least I think. And I have no idea what's going on with him. And I love him. But
good old Chuck.
Yeah, and so I presume that he was talking about, I don't know, someone like me who was kind of mentioning him every 5 minutes for a couple days. And so he said that he discovered that you could kind of mute somebody and you wouldn't see any of their stuff. And so I replied to it, presuming that he would not see it. I said, yeah, some of these people are real annoying. He's like, yeah, tell me about it. So apparently someone is annoying him more than I was, which is unfathomable to me. Stop it, whoever you are, because I like borderline should have criminal charges brought up against me. But that's what you should be applying to, Matthew.
I remember that was actually how our relationship began.
Yep.
Was I was the object of that, and I know what it's like to be on the other end of it. And I don't know if Amy remembers this, but I specifically remember showing one of your messages to Amy and being like, I don't know if I'm supposed to, like, if this guy's doing an act or if this guy's genuinely completely off his rocker. And it turns out it's both.
In the spirit of Orthodox Christianity, both and, yes.
Speaking of Orthodox Christianity, one of my favorite parts of our trip was we didn't get to do enough of it, but Amy says she definitely remembers that.
Yep.
We didn't get to do enough of it, but I was able to listen to the first couple of episodes of Lord of Spirits with Amy, and she was enjoying it. She liked it. She said she liked it that when I would stop it every so often and elaborate on what they were talking about, because she said that they're really like kind of hard to listen to because they're really just talking slow. And the stuff they're talking about is really abstract, and they are very methodical in how they work their way through their conversations, speaking slowly. And I always listen to podcasts on like 2x if I can. Sometimes some of them I have to get down to like 1.8, but and so I'm sitting there listening, and I'm like, I can understand. Like, I feel like I'm going to fall asleep listening to this because I've never listened to them at 1x before. But it was really interesting, and we had listened to some interesting stuff. So here's what we did. This is the kind of the explanation about what happened with me while I was gone. So we set out on this trip. We were I think I told you guys a little bit about it before we left, but it was a bit of a spur of the moment kind of thing. We'd sort of been talking about it, but we didn't actually settle on, we're actually going to do this until maybe the week before, which was my poor wife. That was very stressful for her. But we set out on this trip to drive out to Lockhart, Texas for the Renegade University event at Buck Johnson's house. And our thinking was really that, first of all, we'd planned on going before, but as things were changing and we're at a transition point with a bunch of different projects and stuff that we're working on right now. And we were kind of like, we've just got too much going on. We've got the little man, my family's coming to visit. We got too much stuff going on right now. We're just going to have to push it back. And then things over the last month, things are kind of starting to spin up. It's, the supply chain stuff. We're starting to hear a lot of things, and more mandates are coming out. And I was like, you know what? We need to start really getting serious about getting out of Southern California. Like, we've been planning on it, but we're in a 3-year lease. We're just over a year into a 3-year lease. And our expectation has been, it's going to be a massive hassle to get out of it. Everything that we're going to have to go through. We could probably just throw a bunch of money at them and get out of it that way, but we'd prefer not to do that. But I've spent very little time in Texas, and Amy had never been. And I just driven to DFW a couple of times. And so I knew very little about it. And then Amy also had never really been through New Mexico or Arizona. And she'd never been to Utah and never been to Colorado. So we were like, well, these are the areas. These are some of the most likely places that we would consider relocating to. So we should go check these places out so that if we decide we have to move at the drop of a hat, we're not going somewhere sight unseen. So we decided to make a whole road trip of it, and we figured the timing of the Renegade University event just made it, this is what we need to do right now. So we drove out to Lockhart, which is just south of Austin. And we actually ended up getting as far as Houston. We went to Houston. We met up with Andrew from Popular Liberty. Got to meet him, have lunch with him and his wife, and checked out Casa de Papi Libs, and spent some time talking with him. And that was really good. We had a really fantastic conversation over lunch, and we wish we could have stayed longer and talked more, but we had to hit the road. So we went to northern Houston and met some friends there. And we also met some friends around the San Antonio area and just kind of drove around and just checked out a bunch of different neighborhoods and scoped out various aspects of Texas. And so we're doing a road trip. I think we did, it was 14 or 15 days and 13 or 14 hotels. So it was basically a new hotel every night. And we're driving with a 1-year-old. Now, for a 1-year-old, he travels incredibly well. I'm super proud of him and very impressed at how well we put him in there. It's like an off button. He just goes to sleep and then he'll wake up and be perfectly happy, give him a bottle, let him play with his toys. He was good. But we had to make sure we kept driving because we had a schedule. We had a number of places we needed to get to, and we needed to keep it within about 2 weeks. And so we ended up doing probably on average something like 6 hours of driving a day. And we ended up making it all the way across Texas and all the way back, and went up through the mountains of New Mexico. Albuquerque is a fucking shithole. New Mexico is a dump heap. There's nothing at all redeeming about New Mexico.
Breaking Bad, man. Nothing.
I mean, the geography is really, like, it's nice to look at in especially up in the north. There's some really beautiful spots. It's very picturesque. But the people are, it's so this is just epitomizes what it was like. We're in Southern California. We're way out east of LA. So we haven't worn a mask in 8 months at least. It's basically, it's almost Trump country out here. It's probably about 50-50 people wearing masks, not when you're in stores. So we drove all the way across Mexico, or all the way across New Mexico and Arizona. We drove all the way across Arizona, stayed the night there, went to a mall, did a whole bunch of stuff in the Phoenix area, no masks. Drove across New Mexico, the southern part of New Mexico, no masks. All across Texas, no masks. Come into Farmington, New Mexico, up in the north, there, masks. And Albuquerque, and they've got big old signs saying, "Oh, we have to wear masks. Everyone has to wear masks," and everyone's wearing them, and everyone's like looking at each other side-eyed. And so we're in Albuquerque, and Amy, we stopped at Costco to get gas and go to the bathroom and everything. And Amy's watching the news and she sees people are starting to do runs on toilet paper again. So she's like, well, each time we stop at a Costco to get gas, we might as well just run in and grab a thing of toilet paper and toss it in the back of the truck. So she goes in, she takes a mask with her, like just in case, and gets to the front. There's no signs, doesn't say anything. She's like, cool. So she goes, walks in, goes all the way over to the bathroom, goes to the bathroom. Nobody says anything to her, walks all the way to the back of the store, gets her thing of toilet paper, comes walking all the way back up, gets in line. And she says she's standing there in line and she kind of starts to look around and realizes she's the only person there who's not wearing a mask. Every single other person is masked. She's like, So she gets up to the front, puts her thing on there, gives him her card, like pays and everything. Nobody says anything. The lady's not even looking at her. She prints off the receipt and goes to hand it to Amy and looks at her and was like, and she's like, you need to put that on. And Amy's like, what? And she's like, because she had her mask hanging from her finger or something. She's like, you need to put that on. And she wouldn't give her the fucking receipt until she put her mask on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, so what you're saying is that because I'm endangering everybody here, you're not going to give me the piece of paper that lets me leave. You're going to keep me here endangering everybody until I do this thing to stop endangering everybody. Then you'll let it just...
Which lets you know that it's all about power, in case you're playing. Yeah. It's like when it's like holiday season and you have to go to the mall or some dumb shit, and like you very much understand, what a premium parking spots are at, and like how difficult may or may not have been for you to get one. You finally get one, get in the store, do your thing, you're coming out, but you're not. It's not just holiday season for you, whatever. You're in your car, getting heat on, depending on where you live. And then you see the sea of people that were in the same situation that you found yourself in not 20 minutes ago, looking for parking spaces. But you have to fight off the impulse with varying degrees of success, one way or the other, about expeditiously removing yourself from that parking space. There's a party that just wants to hold on to that a little bit longer. you see the car coming, he's kind of slowing down. It's like, I'm not ready to leave yet because the engine hasn't been running long enough. It's not safe for my vehicle. So that little impulse right there is just what has taken off with everybody, especially if you have no other place where you can sort of scratch that little power authority itch, but like a cashier at a Costco. Oof.
And then not just that, but you also get not only do you get that gratification, but you also get the gratification of someone affirming you, saying that little impulse that you got that you almost felt guilty about, but you were kind of like, it just kind of feels good to scratch that itch. Someone's like, good job, man. Good job scratching that itch. In fact, the fucking TV will tell you every night how good you are because you scratch that itch and you indulge that little impulse.
So I would say somebody like every major institution, fucking college, news network, celebrity. Yeah, somebody. All of them.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So Amy she's like, seriously? So she puts her mask on, takes the receipt away from her, took her mask back off, and walked out of the store.
Yeah.
So she comes out into the parking lot and told me, and it pissed me off.
Yeah.
So that was the highlight of our experience in New Mexico. So we checked out a bunch of different places in Texas. One of the most interesting things we did in Texas was we drove past the Branch Davidian compound, and it was not at all what I expected. It was very interesting, and I guess there's a Netflix series on it that everyone's told us that we need to watch.
You haven't seen that shit?
No.
Wow.
And it's interesting too because I was raised Seventh-day Adventist, and the Branch Davidians were like an offshoot of the Adventist Church. So there's a kind of a little extra connection there for me. So I guess I'll have to check that out. But then we went to it was chilling, Buck. There was a sign. There's a little like the what do you call it, like a concrete bunker down there, and there's a sign on it that says this is where women and children were buried and gassed alive or something like that. It's just that's the sign just says they were just buried and gassed alive. I was like, Jesus Christ. So it was kind of creepy there. But so we on our way back, we ended up stopping and we stayed in what's up, Charlemagne? Charlemagne's in the comments.
Buddy, I know who you are. I love you a lot. I'm a strange guy. Yeah, I mean, I just want to know. I mean, I heard ethnically, I think I might have a beat on what's going on. Like, I don't know, man. Just like, are you my brethren or are you not my brethren? When you catch up, because we know you're 10 minutes behind, but I just kind of curious what's going on and maybe why. Are you taking the stance against circumcision out of like a personal reason, or are you just kind of something like after the fact, like, hey, moving forward in the future, this is a good way to go? That's all.
Do us a favor and describe.
How did you not? God damn it! You haven't blocked me, Charlemagne. So confused by that. What a mensch. Jesus, retroactively makes me feel terrible.
Populibs is in here shooting a shot. Get it, buddy. So we finished up we finished up the trip in Moab and then drove up through Provo and came back down into Vegas, met up with my mom, and really rounded things off really nicely. But it was a very good, very breakneck, never stopped, never let up, just kind of going the whole time. It was nice. It was nice to get away and feel just kind of hit the open road and just see the rest of the world. And it's funny, as we're driving across this, we had the same takeaway when we were in May, when you drove up the coast and back down through Nevada. People who talk about like overcrowding or like how there's like not enough room on the planet have clearly never left an urban center, because we were doing 90 miles an hour across open fields where you couldn't see the mountains on either side. Like the horizon was that far away. And it was like there was one person every 3 miles. There is so much empty space, so much room out across the Western United States. And I just couldn't help but like look at all this open space and think, like, this isn't even uninhabitable. It's not like this is the Sahara Desert. It's not like it's super rocky and you just couldn't live there. This is like just like open, semi-arid fields that it's just an engineering project to make them habitable. And I just couldn't help but look, like, people talk about like having to leave the US altogether and get out. And I think the only way that seems plausible to me is in a case where supply chains not only collapse, but are completely taken over and subjugated in a way that would just be so massively inefficient. I can't ever see it happening. It just doesn't seem plausible to me. So, I mean, there's so much room out there for people to just gang themselves up in a community and just go build yourself a little town and surround yourself with people who feel the same way, who see the world the same way you do. I think that there's a very clear pathway toward doing that in a way that doesn't guarantee you're going to be on the radar of people who are going to come after you. You just have to not be a moron about it.
You did pass the Waco Memorial, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair. Like that's the counter, of course. But what was like? There was, I don't know the entire story, but I know that they weren't just out there twiddling their thumbs, minding their own business. And
from what I hear, they were twiddling something. I don't know. I mean, it depends who you talk to.
But so now that's illustrative. It's that if you position yourself as an enemy, if you pose as direct challenge or opposition, then the system has the power to create reality. They will create the reality that you live in. You don't get to create your own reality when you've placed yourself in a position of hostility toward the regime. So, all these things are just like, it wasn't necessarily exactly what I wanted to talk about today. It was just these were thoughts that I was thinking as I was driving across the plains of the western half of the United States. That there's
I like this direction though, because I think that was an impulse.
Let's go.
For a lot of people, somewhere between March of 2020 and say January 6th. I think that if you followed a graph, man, how do you grow your own food and just get the fuck out of everywhere like that impulse wasn't a lot of people who maybe never budgeted on having that impulse.
Mm-hmm.
It would be interesting to see like a blueprint for how it would be done well. I am incompetent and also old, so I'm not doing that. But man, if I was like 20 what the fuck ever, I would have been so about that. And actually, okay, I guess that's where all right, we'll speak ambiguous. That's where a lot of like this like young guy energy should be channeled.
Yes.
Not anywhere else that
yes.
maybe being channeled. Not someplace where it's going to be channeled and then used as like fuel for future Wacos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's a very clear formula for that. Yeah, there's a very clear formula to wind up at the Waco status. Mm-hmm. And maybe not necessarily literally, because these things don't always have to be literal. Mm-hmm. You can get a digital Wacoing as well. That is maybe it's not catastrophic, maybe it doesn't completely end you, but there was no reason to put yourself in that position, because anybody that gets digitally Wacoed, with very few exceptions, makes less of an impact than they could have if they didn't have that. You're putting needless hurdles in front of yourself if you're setting yourselves up to be even digitally Wacoed. So you had some thoughts, but
man, you can't have me talk when I know Chuck is in here. You know how nervous I am right now? I'm trying to keep my shit together. Fucking Charlemagne. Oh, God damn it, man.
Well, to give you just a second.
No,
I have to shout out Mark Egan. So he's here watching right now. I met him at the Renegade University event, and we stood and chatted for a little while, and I appreciate. I was there with Amy and with the little man, so we were kind of constantly going back and forth between parent duty and attending the event, and so I appreciate people's patience as they were interacting with me then as well. But he gave me this thing of dried mangoes that's like actually like from the Philippines. He said that it was something that was a little bit of work to actually get it to him to give to me. And so I haven't opened it yet. I saved it because I wanted to open it here and eat one right now. just like, what is this? Is just additional content, I guess. So so shout out Mark Egan. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I didn't actually ask him while we were there. I just talked to him.
It doesn't
I've
sound
always,
right. I will say that.
yeah, I'm very, I understand that I'm white and I approach these things like a white person. So I've always loved dried mangoes.
What the fuck is wait, no, I meant the name. Is Mark Egan not a white person? Amy, can you kick people out of the chat?
Hold on, I got to make you a moderator first.
Oh, shit.
No, he's
Okay.
Mark, you tell us. I assume you're Filipino, I assume. But this is good stuff. So this is what happens when you miss out, Stephen, when you don't decide to go attend the events, then you miss out on great stuff like this.
Mango.
Mm-hmm. A mukbang, yeah. Having a mukbang.
Okay. All right.
You're really good.
Here so I can like calm my shit down.
All right.
Oof. That was nerve-wracking. Let me tell you.
Charlemagne, if you're not here, just post.
He's not here. Amy informed me that he's not here, so I just yeah, my pulse is down. Like I feel good. I hope he listens to maybe the rest of. Gosh.
So you're less nervous, like knowing that he'll listen to it later than you are knowing that he's listening to you right now.
He won't listen to it later. I don't know how he hasn't. The fuck he hasn't blocked me. How did he see that? So confused. I mean, I really asked him if he was circumcised like a lot. Like, I'm sure there's a statute that you can't ask that on Twitter more than 17 times.
Somehow you escaped the algorithm, huh?
Yeah. Okay. No segue. I have been finding myself when people talk about liberty, wondering what the fuck they're talking about, and just this is all just kind of trying to peel things back and just start from scratch. So when there's all this debate about either spreading the message of liberty or I saw like in there's these kind of debates all the time. Who's done more for liberty? And I'm, as you know, not a big fan of words because they're all just so subjective and they have all this meaning that everyone is going to kind of put on them. I don't know who would say that they're anti-liberty. Even if someone who's like kind of more of like a left persuasion, they would maybe have a reaction to the word liberty because people they hate use it. But in terms of like what like liberty or like freedom means to them, their whole dissertation that they would give you is just going to be so different than what your interpretation of freedom or liberty is, that I just don't even know like how these words kind of matter. But I was just curious about the idea of liberty or freedom itself, and just kind of like who has experienced it, when have they experienced it, do animals experience it, like who's free? And I can't really get like a straight answer about it. Stapleton will tell you that he knows what liberty is, and will tell you kind of how to achieve more of it. And like that's pretty cool. But just like in the theoretical, people that we don't maybe agree with all the time world, I just found myself exploring the idea of what is this thing that is called liberty? Does it even exist? Is it just like a construct? Is it a useful construct and something to kind of idealize and like move toward? Has using the word liberty moved people towards liberty? Like if that's the goal, like has the word and the use of the word like functioned as a way to like bring more people to it? I haven't observed that, but like I have over the past couple months or so, I've kind of asked for examples of like different successes in terms of achieving liberty, but like it all kind of seems to like come down to like moving away from things. And it just gives me the idea that liberty and freedom are really things that are allowed to you, even if that kind of means allowed to you like in the sense of like being away from people who wouldn't allow it, or would allow less liberty and freedom, which is why, you're talking about the middle of fucking New Mexico or or just getting in the middle of nowhere ish, as much as possible for what is reasonable. And yeah, I just like this is kind of back to when I started questioning the idea of rights some years ago. Is like, yeah, man, this all sounds cool, but I'm pretty sure rights aren't real. Pretty sure those don't exist. And like, if you kill me, I die, and I don't have like a real right to life. I think all you're really saying is we want to live in a world or a society where life is respected, people are killing each other, and that's great. But like, what ensures that? It's not the right itself. There's some like morality or like ideas that underpin that kind of society that you want to live in. So that's where I found myself. And so in so doing, I kind of, just was running like a sort of a thought experiment that I turned into like a Twitter poll. But basically, Stapleton, I talk about Stapleton a lot because he's like one of the only people that that represents any kind of like real practical application, real world application of moving towards liberty, I think, in a world that is like mostly theoretical and just full of theory and kind of like ideals. And we're just like so far away from anything ideal. If Z is ultimate liberty, in 2018, it became pretty clear that, okay, well, libertarians don't even seem to have a real way of getting from M to Z. Like now we're at like E. It's like so yeah. So it made me kind of think. It made me kind of think. Okay, well, I'm in this situation where I basically work for myself. I haven't had to go through. I didn't always work for myself, but I haven't, as someone who works for himself, had to yet worry about any medical decisions that I could be potentially bullied into. And one of the major reasons for that is because sort of listening to Stapleton over the years, who've been saying this for years and years and years and years and years, about kind of controlling the source of your income and working for yourself and all this stuff. Listening to someone kind of give me the confidence to like leave a job that paid really good money to do something that was not going to guarantee any kind of significant salary or any salary at all, really. I am experiencing more real world freedom than anything that is responsible for me having read any amount of Mises or Rothbard or anything like or listening to like a Ron Paul speech or anything like that. And so I posted like a Twitter poll, like who's done more for liberty, like since that's kind of a trendy thing to do, is like, who's done more for the cause for liberty. And so I just put up Ron Paul and Stapleton. I gave like a little blurb, which I knew was like leading, when I wrote it, but also I was only just trying to give the context of what I was talking about. And B, it's libertarians, so they're going to do the fucking opposite anyway. And like C, it's like Ron Paul, and that's like very sacred to some people. So no matter what the question is, Ron Paul has to win, even though like it could be like, well, who's a better Marine, Ron Paul or what? I don't know, was Ron Paul a Marine? I don't fucking know, but you know what I mean.
I don't remember. I think he was in the
Who
Army.
could win at arm wrestling right now, Jason Stapleton or Ron Paul? People are just going to answer Ron Paul. And I understand that. I mean, what a likable guy and a great example. I elaborated it in a comment that Ron Paul is like an incredible example to people and a great man. And Jason Stapleton kind of put me in a position where helped me be in a position where I don't need to worry about yet taking an injection. I don't want to. So who's done more for liberty? And so really all it was is just showing someone's preference for kind of practical applications, like this is the real world, this is how we deal with the real world, or sort of maybe principle and theory, I guess. And I don't have anything to say about anyone's like take on any of it. I think maybe just at some point it becomes inevitable that you run into the real world. Man, I talked for like a Matthew Erickson amount of time right there, so I'm gonna shut the fuck up.
That was good. I didn't have anything to. Okay. I wanted to kind of let those words just hang there for a minute. Mm-hmm. There's a It's funny too because the way you described Ron Paul being like he's like the sacred one, the one who
Mhm.
he always has to win every poll, because
Mhm.
he's like the holy father of libertarianism.
Mhm.
And Jason is libertarians have a lot of villains. So like Jason isn't like the archetypical villain, but to borrow from let's see, Clownarchist here in the chat, he said um that he said, I think most of the modern liberty movement is only fueled to be left wing authoritarianism that we've experienced. It's just a reaction. So it might be a mile wide, but it's only an inch deep, which is why they're so hostile toward quote unquote, post libertarians. They're just like leftists in this regard, treat apostates worse than infidels. So, in that sense, being someone who's always been opposed to you is not as bad as being someone who used to be on your side, but now is not. That's a much worse. Someone who's apostatized from your movement or from your group is someone who's a greater enemy because they're seen as a Judas. They're seen as that's a betrayal. And Jason is someone who what do people say? His show used to be so good. He used to have he had all the right talking points. He said all the right things. He told me all the stuff that I wanted to hear. He used to. But then it's different. Now he's saying something different and I don't like that. And people will attack him with more hostility than they'll go after like actual villains in the world. This is something that Girard talks about within the idea of mimetic theory. The mimetic theory of conflict happens most often between people who are close rather than people who are far apart. So libertarians fight with different sects of libertarians more than they fight with communists. And communists fight with different sects of communists more than they fight with libertarians. Everyone always fights with the person who's close to them more than they do with their actual enemies until times get so completely desperate that one little group stops all of their infighting, unites themselves around a single purpose, and that group takes over the world. So everyone is always trying to, there's this urge to suppress infighting and to not fight with people like, hey, we're all on the same team here, let's not infight. That's a manifestation of that realization being baked into us on a genetic level, that if we just stop all this infighting, we can unite together around this common purpose and we'll go defeat the enemies. So someone who is standing against that by not uniting around the right ideas is therefore it needs to be the scapegoat. They need to be pushed aside and cast aside, and everyone needs to unite around opposing them. So everyone's just trying to find the thing to get everybody else to unite around it. And if you get them all to unite around it, then they think all you have to do is unite around the right idea and everything will be accomplished. Well, that's true, but it has to be the right idea. So it's interesting that Jason triggers that in people. So it's not just that it was Ron Paul against, some uncontroversial person, but it was Ron Paul against the Antichrist, the libertarian Antichrist, who's an archetype of this greater person. So,
with the comment that's up there now, that's another thing I've been on lately is that it's just, man, if you try to eliminate should and cousin of, it kind of takes you a couple interesting places. It sort of brings you to like a different kind of like thought process, I would say.
Elaborate on that. What is it? What do you replace it with?
Right down. Well, I just think it's, if you look at should like it's just a useless word, it kind of just brings you more towards what is. And
so instead of saying I should do this, you say I will do this.
Well, not even,
or I won't do this.
Just in terms of like the world, thinking of the world as it should be versus the world that it is, I guess, formalist kind of a thing. But like in terms of, okay, yeah, my mind's kind of going back. I remember, not take it back to Stapleton, but just in terms of how the world changed, in terms of when Jason changed his show, and Jason had this show that was I thought it was always I don't remember, but I thought it was always kind of a little bit of a mix of both. It kind of did current events, and like libertarian-y stuff, and then kind of mixed in not like a self-help thing, but sort of like finance and business and stuff like that. I don't know what era I was listening to, but I always felt that it had that vibe. But when he did the official show change, I think people could have looked at that, and that was, when was that?
End of 2018.
End of 2008. So yeah,
beginning
so
of 2019.
Right. So everything was pretty chill. 2018, I think. And so when he did this pivot where it's just like, hey man, to get real liberty, you got to kind of worry about you, and like all this theory stuff really isn't gonna get you a lot of liberty, but controlling the source of your income and figuring out how to accumulate wealth and power and influence, like that may not. That only sounds better with time. I'll say that, right? So if you take like 2018, the day after Jason officially changes the direction of his show, and you kind of look at like how much sense that makes to you at that time, and then you kind of fast forward to like 2019, 20, and here we are, wherever we are now. It only seems like it's making more and more sense, as opposed to if you take some like libertarian kind of gotcha line or whatever along the line. So, and I don't even know whose quote this is. It's just, taxation is theft. Like if someone says that to you now, he's like, okay, but or no matter who you elect, you always get John McCain. Oh, great, just like
right.
But in 2018, that shit was fire,
Right, right.
And so you just you see things kind of go like this, and it's just interesting. And so more and more each day, Jason, what he's saying and doing makes more sense. And Jason doesn't seem like he's wrapped up with should, I guess, if I can connect it back.
Yeah,
Jason
no, he's
telling you to deal with the world as it is before
yes.
you. Yeah.
His thing, yeah, he would say like the question isn't what should you do, the question is what will you do. Don't spend time talking about what you should do, just do what you're going to do. And if what you're doing is generating outcomes that you don't like, then do something different. But spending time talking, it's like you should spend very little time thinking about what you should do. That should be pretty obvious. That should become very clear to you very easily. And if it doesn't, then you've got something to work on. You need to improve your gut. What was I going to say? Oh, so this thing here on this comment, I now internally translate when I hear rights into oughts, and I like that. I really like that, because when you say this is my right, what you're saying is everyone else ought to give me this thing. Everyone else ought to treat me in this way, and perhaps treat you in this way by not treating you in that way. It could be a negative. Everyone ought not do yada, yada, yada. But ultimately, it starts with them. You're saying this is how they are. You don't have any control over them. So if they're not treating you in the way that they ought, why? Start with that question. Why are they not?
Actually,
because
we're chimps. And I think we kind of forget that a lot. I'm saying a lot of nihilist things and a lot of annoying atheist things, and I'm really neither. But I find myself saying a lot.
Well, it's that maybe you could maybe to bridge the gap. The way that we act is indistinguishable from chimps.
Right.
So for all intents and purposes, we're chimps.
Right.
When you're not acting, I mean, to go directly into it, when you're not following the spirit, you're a chimp. You act like a chimp. You understand how humans act by understanding by studying them the way you would a chimp. And with a chimp, you wouldn't ask, well, what should this chimp do in this circumstance? That would be if like the scientists would like, Jerry, we study these chimps all day, every day. And have you ever stopped to think about what they should do? It's like you'd be seen as a goofball. You don't ask what animals should do. You just ask what will they do? What do they do? Their identity is what they do. You can't know them in any other way. The should just doesn't exist. So if people are not treating you as they ought, assume that they're chimps that are acting as chimps would act, which means they're incentivized to treat you in a certain way. And if you want them to be incentivized to treat you differently, you can either try to change all of them or you can change yourself. And to me, that's the easy part. The easy part is just trying to change me. That's why this isn't a black pill. This is a white pill. You get to change yourself and put yourself in the position where everyone else will be incentivized to treat you the way you want to be treated. That's a white pill.
I think when I hear libertarians and stuff talk about aggression and force and, well, where's the line where, you know, something becomes force, I just zoom out and I just kind of look back and just be like, yeah, man, we're chimps. It's all force. Everything's predicated on force. It's like potential. Like, is it fair to say that force is the presence of potential violence or something along those lines? So like when some guy kind of like walks up to you, like there's things that human beings can do that are as good as like punching you in the mouth. We would agree with that. Like effectively they've punched you in the, even though they haven't punched, I'm not touching you. Okay. You're not touching me. You know, it's just, you know, like I just feel there's so much philosophy and head fucking that goes on that it gets forgotten that we're chimps, and it's all for. So like the first chimp that like picked up a rock, you know, like potentially the other chimps were looking at it and just kind of wonder, well, that's very sophisticated, you know. What are you gonna do with that? Like, is there gonna be force involved for how sophisticated like a chimp is? But so okay, well, capitalism, liberalism, like all this shit, like this is just a different rock, and it's gonna be used by a certain percentage of people, no matter, you know, ones who don't see fit to necessarily overcome or exalt themselves above human nature, but rather cleverly disguise it, you know, for their own benefit. It's a rock, man. Like it's all force. Everything is force. Like there's no even blended line of when things become force. Every interaction that you have is in some part governed by like an idea of force. You know, you watch two men talk to each other. There's like certain leeway that like they have with one another. Watch two different men talk to one another. The leeway can like narrow, you know, significantly. I mean, all these things. It just I think we've really forgotten a lot of this. It's just like, oh, let's delve into this text or that text, and at the end of the day, it's like, hey man, we're basically chimpanzees, and I don't know if you've ever seen like chimpanzees like behave, but that's at least underneath, you know, everything that you're dealing with.
All technology divorces man from his actions. We create technology to try to distance ourselves from the things that we're actually doing. We're creating levers to get ourselves further and further away from the actual thing, the actual consequence. And so the more a society evolves away from physical manual labor, the more that people begin to lose what you're talking about. Because there's like this simple wisdom to what you're saying, that like where like the farmer is wiser than the lawyer. The farmer who has never been to school, never learned to read and write, but just worked fields all day and tamed horses and whatever, like that guy understands reality more than the guy who has 10 degrees and can explain every possible theorem in the world to you. There's a being connected with the world physically has power to it, and what we're seeing through the rise of technocracy is more and more of an incentive for people to remove themselves from the physical world, from physical interaction, specifically physical interaction with other people. Because that's when you're talking about these two guys that are facing each other, 90% of the communication that's happening for them is subconscious. It's magical. We don't understand how that communication happens. It's communication happening in the spiritual realm. All of the body language and pheromones and all that kind of stuff. That's all going into like a big black magic box in our heads, and our reactions are being spit out from it. And by the time that our rational mind engages with the situation, it's reactive. It's reacting to stuff that has already happened. So your active conscious mind is perpetually in a state of reaction. You're perpetually reacting to the world around you. And I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but to the title, what is liberty and does it even exist? All of this talk of what liberty is, all these theorems, these theoretical arguments about the definition of liberty and how to use it, and all these sorts of conversations are all they're all only as good. They're interesting as knickknacks, as like philosophical tchotchkes that, sometimes
knickknacks. Okay. Jesus Christ, buddy. Come back
sometimes you want to go out and have a drink and just like talk about something interesting with some friends. Like you might go talk sports, or you might talk cars, or whatever else. Maybe you might pull these philosophical knickknacks out and chit chat about them. But there comes a time.
Have a segment on the show, knickknacks and chit chatting.
Knickknacking and chit chatting. There comes a time when, like you used the analogy. I don't remember if this was before or after we went live, but you used the analogy of low tide.
Yeah, man. I do.
Do you want me to?
I think. I don't know. Probably sounds smarter if you say it. But fucking no. I think it was talking about like the Machiavellians. It's like, oh yes, there's a ruling elite, and so the idea of oh man, look how messed up this past like year and a half. What do we do? Like, first of all, that question is like a democracy mind poisoned question to ask in the first place.
Yes.
What do we do? And if there's something to do, let me know. I think that it might be kind of a unique question to just sort of just like pop up the presumption that there's anything to be done or that anything would be effective that you would do, unless you're at like a certain sort of status, to where the Machiavellians, I guess, would come in, where, if there's like a flow chart, and the first question might be, okay, are you a member of the ruling elite? No. Okay, are you a member of a group that could become the ruling elite? No. Are you someone who could influence future potential ruling? No. All right, man. Well, go check out this podcast with this Marine. He's gonna help you out a little, because it seems that things are, in terms of like the realm of our actual control, kind of observing how things have been changing over the past 2 years. It seems like going to the beach and just wondering how to make the tide be low when it's high, and just presuming that you can particularly do anything about it, as opposed to behave in a way that you would behave when the tide is high, and then wait for the tide to eventually become low, which you have like every reason to believe that it will. You might not know exactly when. Just like that kind of outlook.
Yeah.
And so if there's anyone out there with a compelling, message to explain why, no, that's not what the situation is. This is not a beach tide situation. This is a totally other situation. This is like a bathtub situation. We can pull a drain plug. Then yeah, I'm like all for hearing it. It just doesn't look like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Showing up and trying to make it low tide when it isn't, is I think that's, I don't remember the context of the verse where God told Saul, I think at the time, not to kick against the pricks, but that's kind of how that sounds to me. Like, showing up at the beach. Oh, it's high tide. We need it to be low tide right now. So how are we going to force it to be low tide? Well, it's like, well, one thing that you can do is just wait until it's low tide because it's going to
Especially if
be
you're a low
again.
time preference person.
Right. It's going to be then. So then what are you going to do once it's low tide? Where are you going to be when it's low tide again? Are you going to be in position to take advantage of the fact that it's low tide? Have you put yourself in that spot? Have you ensured that if you aren't alive at that point, that your children or grandchildren can benefit from it being low tide? If you haven't, then you now have a clear path forward. There is your praxis. Your praxis is to prepare for the low tide. And I think it's pretty clear. I said something about this at the very beginning that we're in, like, things are moving. There's a very clear sense now that things are starting to move forward. That there's like, yep, we're doing this. It's kind of like people are like, are we going to do? Are we really? We're really going to do it. This is it. We're pulling the plug. Okay, all right. So now is when the regime is going to collapse. This is when it's going to happen. Who knows how long it's going to take? But the regime is collapsing. Every imperial regime in history has collapsed. And when it has collapsed, it's been some combination of the sorts of things that are all happening right now. We're experiencing narrative collapse. And we're in a technologically connected world, technologically, globally connected world. And that is experiencing a narrative collapse in real time. And it's just a matter of time before people start withdrawing from the center of the conflict and setting themselves to the task of surviving the conflict. And eventually, enough people are going to do that the conflict is going to come to a head. And there is going to be a battle, metaphorically, literally, physically, spiritually. I don't know. I know it'll be spiritually. But it's going to come to a head. And all sorts of different outcomes can come from that. Most people will have different experiences of it. Like, if we experience World War III, not everybody is going to experience World War III. Not everybody will be fighting a war. Some people won't be. If there's an economic collapse, not everybody will collapse economically. Some people won't. So unless this is the end of the world, unless this is, this is where the meteor is going to hit and blow us back into the Stone Age, then there are going to be people who survive this collapse and who survive it and are better off. The question is, what do those people 20 years from now who are looking back, the ones who said, wow, we're really glad we did XYZ because when all the shitty things happened, we benefited. We were in a place where we were shielded and protected. 20 years from now, the people that are saying that, what are those people doing now? Are they trying to take over a political party? To spread a message? To spread a message of some ambiguous term that everyone has their own definition for? I just don't see that as a viable path toward people's own success. And on top of that, there's a bunch of different ways in which it can be actively harmful. So we talked just before we went live about, like, I want to initiate a conversation, or I want to continue, or I want to have a conversation with people and engage with them.
Mm-hmm.
But my goal isn't to be combative. My goal isn't to be the entire reason why I want to engage in this conversation in the first place is because I care about the people on the other side of it. If I didn't care about them, I wouldn't share this stuff. I've said explicitly that I'm only looking to talk to people who are inclined to listen to me. And I don't know how to address some of these things without it coming off as combative and hostile. And so I guess I'm kind of I'm sort of at a loss right now for how to move. I've been sitting thinking about this all day. Like how is it time to stop talking and just start doing? You know, there comes a point at which, like, sometimes you have to market and sometimes you have to do R&D and sometimes you have to be in product development. And it seems like maybe we've marketed as far as we can for right now. And now it's time to put our heads down and just start working. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying like is this the case? Are we at that point now? And I don't know. So people in the comments, okay, well this feels like something we have to address. So apparently, since we started recording here, Pete Q canceled his LPMC membership and subscribed to the RPMC. Huh. Well, that's interesting. And he tweeted out the screenshots. So, it seems like perhaps there's going to be more combativeness.
that was Pete, man. You really fucked up Matthew's fucking very special episode of Kingpin that he was having with himself with that shit. That was great. Like, I was like, where's this? It's like when they cut out all the music and there's like lots of silence. Usually there's like some like little audience sound or something like that, but nope. And then we were really trying to go down this road of, you know, it's because we care so much. And you know, when you guys want to talk, you can go ahead and talk. And then it's just Pete's just like, hey, fuck you.
I come in like a wrecking ball.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of you know, these ideas that are very important to people, and you know, everyone kind of thinks that they know the best way forward and have the best ideas for everything. You're not like libertarians thinking that they have the best ideas. You are not alone. Everyone thinks actually that they have the best ideas. I would invite you to go through my entire Facebook news feed since 2012. And let me tell you, you want to talk about people that think they have the best ideas? Ooh-wee. That's why I sort of had kind of a head start on freaking the fuck out about all this. I don't know, did I ever talk about? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. But yeah, boy, oh boy, did I get an early education on woke shit. But yeah, and it's kind of like we're talking here. These people who you were sort of in line with at one point, then you see them kind of go off in this different direction. There's a parting of ways. People that you're closer to. That's where a lot of this perceived acrimony, maybe, because I don't know if it's actually. I think it's just emotion, and emotion's a dumb thing, and it can go in a lot of directions. Which is why a lot of times when we started talking in the old days, not one of us certainly more than the other one, but you know, when we started talking in the old days, both of us, I would say equally, definitely not the one who's not me, would tend to get a little bit fired up, even though that wasn't our intention at the time. And that's just the reason for it. But at the end of the day, I would say, this is a not fully formulated thought. It's a stretch for me. I feel like we've spent a lot of time in like sort of this already established camp, you know, like we were kind of at least close enough to observe it, in it, participating in it in some degree for a while. And so then we're maybe kind of like stepped off like camp for a little bit to try to figure some shit out. And then, you know, there's a lot of material of us trying to figure things out, and there's us talking to other people about figuring things out. And, you know, I would say that probably the people who are critical of, I don't know, us or Pete or anybody who like gets put in this like post-libertarian like bubble or anything like that. Man, I wonder how much time they spent earnestly trying to understand what it is that, we're trying to figure out, what we're trying to say. It's probably not as much time as we've spent with like the older way of thinking, or I mean, not to make it a pejorative, but just like sort of the established way of thinking that we're calling into question.
We've spent more time thinking about their ideas than they have thinking about ours.
There you go. There's a way to say it, Quickie.
Yeah, and I mean to be fair to them, they have no obligation to spend time thinking about our ideas or engaging with them, and definitely the onus is on us to ensure that we're presenting those ideas in a fashion that that they are able to consume reasonably. But there's also,
but if they can't deal with a 3-hour podcast, you want to know what? Fuck them. You said you were low time. I'm kidding. You said you were low time preference.
I know that my podcast listening time has basically disappeared. I have very, very little. Lord of Spirits is the one that I consistently get because it comes out every other Thursday, and or second and fourth Thursday of every month. So I could do 2 episodes a month. I can pull that off. But so like I definitely don't. I'm not under the impression that that I'm not trying to deliver the idea that I have the expectation that these people need to go fully consume and listen to every single thing that we've ever produced. And for one, they're not even all up as podcasts yet, so that makes it extra difficult. But
yeah, but you want to know what? And this is like, I would have fucked with like Charlemagne about this if he were here. Well, I wouldn't have, but I'm gonna say that I would have if he were here. But yeah, like there's a lot of people that are getting shine. Like, there's a lot of talking points that are coming up that we were delving into, like, I don't know, 9 years ago, whenever we started babbling to each other. But yeah, like those, it's kind of cool. Like the questions that we started batting around or whatever are just kind of entering a bigger conversation, and that's cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I was gonna tweet out something like antagonistic to Charlemagne, I'd be like, "Hey man, congratulations on getting all your podcast appearances, talking about the stuff that we were discussing in detail like a year ago. That's got to be pretty cool." But half the reason that I know who Moldbug is because I listen to fucking Charlemagne read him. So it's a joke. It's a joke, for God's sakes. Just because I kind of took the ball and ran with it and made a lot of really brilliant predictive statements many months ago that are sort of ahead of my time.
It's honestly surreal. It's like making some predictions and then starting to see them coming about. That's something that is, obviously the capacity to make that prediction is something that I got from other people, from listening to other people talk about it. But to take in the knowledge and then to turn around and make it and predict something with it and predict that accurately, that is the power in that. There is the fact that you were able to take it and predict with it. And when you find something that's predictive, it doesn't, like, to me, it doesn't matter who found it first.
Sure.
But you want to understand.
It was me. Do you hear me, Charlemagne? I'm kidding.
You want to understand how the people who used it, how they came to put those things together. Like if I go see a machine and I see that machine working, then I want to go understand the people that put the machine together and how. I'm like, it doesn't mean that the people who put the machine together are, the ones who manufactured that matter, who brought that matter into being. But like, I feel like there's a train of thought that we went through where we put together a bunch of disparate ideas from a bunch of different people, and we came to kind of a unique position and started talking about that position by bringing in a bunch of different influences that weren't necessarily connected. And the way we connected them and where and when it happened seems to have sparked something. And I didn't expect that. I wasn't anticipating that. When I made predictions, I was like, I can make this prediction, and if it doesn't come true, then you know, like who, like what? You took me seriously? You know? It's easy to be like, who am I? I'm some schmuck
Not that that's happened
talking
to
to
her.
talking, talking to 5 live viewers on YouTube. Like I'm nobody. You know, I'm testing this tool out. I'm just shooting it off and seeing what happens with it. And it just so happens that something interesting happened with it. So now I'm kind of like, well, what do I do with that?
I think
I
it's
don't
an emergent thing too. I think
Yeah.
that a lot of the people that we're talking to are same people are asking those questions. And I
Yeah.
remember talking with, again, between my time is like March 2020, right? And then January 6th ish. And then like the fallout is kind of like after, but like that was like the cutoff to kind of just separate, like, okay, in this like crop of people, who's going to be thinking that maybe we need to revisit some like base principles, or just like find some new ideas or whatever. And if you're like, nope, we're staying the course, then but
is this a good time to segue into your tweet?
Oh fuck, what tweet?
Remember the tweet that you sent me the voice message about?
Oh,
with the video?
Okay, sure.
Were you not planning on doing that on the show?
No, I totally forgot about it. But yeah, and I think, you know, the last thing I just think I wanted to say is that man, talking about connecting ideas. If you saw the flow chart, or like the sort of like not conspiracy web, because it has nothing conspiracy, but just sort of the like pictures, thumbtacks, pieces of yarn thing that like Matthew and I have sort of conceptualized and have wanted to make for a long time. Trying to put all these and Uncle I see in the chat, Uncle Ted's in there. Don't think Uncle Ted ain't in there.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, if you saw like that sort of gigantic poster board abomination that Matthew and I had tried to see if there was going to be an easy way to bring into reality, either in visual or like podcast form, or even maybe written, man, you would really kind of know what we have been trying to do. But I don't know. I think it's only going to exist in our brains. I think it exists basically to have an idea of what we wanted sort of the show to be, and maybe now we just kind of realize, you know, it's there's a lot of ideas out there. They kind of connect, and
I think
we're at a reasonable place where we can kind of shift gears and move forward.
It was kind of like we wanted to take all these different data points here and connect them all into one thing and put it together in one thing, and we felt like we needed to be the ones responsible for putting all those pieces together, going through and pulling each individual one and popping it together into one unit. And we started talking about them. We started progressing through some of them, and Steven just died. We started progressing through some of them, and then all of them just kind of started organically popping up and connecting themselves together. And that's what's been kind of weird for me, is it seemed like a year ago there was people who were talking about Moldbug, there was people who were talking about the LPMC, there was people who were talking about orthodoxy, there was people who were talking about crypto, there was people who were talking about I guess the Jungian cognitive functions thing isn't really connected in yet, and that's kind of one of the next things that I'm wanting to pull more into the conversation. But all of these different things were all floating around sort of separately, and then we started talking about them connected to each other, some of them, and then everything sort of organically everyone was talking about them now. Now everyone's talking about orthodoxy and all these different subjects just seem to naturally fit, and it feels like the timing is that this is how it's supposed to be. That as the empire collapses, the shadow that it's been casting, that's been obscuring all these different subjects, begins to collapse with it. And all of those subjects come forward into the light, and you can see them. And some people start seeing them before others. And I think that those who start seeing it first have a responsibility to start communicating that to others. But the onus is on you The onus is on me to communicate that effectively and communicate that in a way that doesn't compromise the truth, but also doesn't needlessly ostracize people or needlessly push people away. And that's something that's a point that I'm kind of hovered at right now is to what extent do I do what to what extent do I do my thing regardless of how people respond to it? And to what extent do I tailor the thing that I'm going to do around people to kind of curate the public image? Because to this point, I've mentioned a number of times that my goal here is not to evangelize, but to preach to the choir. Like specifically, I want an echo chamber. I just want to be surrounded by people who think and talk and care about the same things as me. I don't have any desire to be connected to anybody else. So to me, my method of communication or the things that I want to talk about are themselves useful as selection mechanisms, because when I put them out there, if they ostracize people, that's good. I want those people ostracized. It's not because I bear ill will toward them, but I just don't feel any desire to tailor my message around their sensibilities. And if they want to take me the wrong way or show no desire to actually connect with me and try to hash things out, then cool. That's great. Have a good life. I bear you no ill will. But ultimately, the instinct to evangelize and to get everybody to buy into your idea is itself, like you said, a mind poison of democracy. Ultimately, not everybody is going to buy in. Ultimately, most people are not going to buy in. Ultimately, most people are going to be hostile. And if you're at a point where a lot of people are hostile toward you in this kind of context, that's probably a good sign. That probably means that you are on the right track, talking about the right things. So I'm
This sets up for a segue.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So let's do this tweet. Okay. How do I share this? Okay. Steven, share audio. Okay. So this here is let me put it down here where I can see it better. This is a tweet. This is a tweet from Steven. And it is. Do you want to just give your thinking behind it, or give your lead in to it?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Shit, I think I meant to say no, but I said yeah, and here we are. But yeah, no, it's Dave put out a tweet that maybe some people saw, kind of making fun of us about. Well, I don't know who else it could be. I mean, it was just sort of representative of any number of people. But anyway, there was something in there about basically suggesting that doing a podcast with 1,000 episodes dedicated to a monarchist blogger was silly. And in comparison to those same very people who may do a podcast about a monarchist blogger, insinuating that talking about the nap and spreading the message of liberty was silly. So the idea would be that, you look at you guys. You guys are talking about this fanciful monarchy thing, that would never happen, and you just dedicate this whole show to this dude. Which, by the way, I think the name of the show is more of an homage to someone who got us thinking differently, more so than like the dude itself, and particularly his ideas. Although they will be discussed and have been discussed.
Honestly, apart from the live reading episodes, maybe this is just something that just popped into my head. So anybody who's in the chat who's listened to a lot of us, how much have we talked? Like, what percentage would you say, apart from the live reading episodes? So I'm going to cheat on this a little bit. Apart from the live reading episodes, because we've done, I don't know, 8 of them maybe over the course of a year. apart from those, what percentage of the rest of our time is centered on Moldbug? I'm not trying to prove a point with this. I'm just, as I thought about this, because I thought it was weird to kind of be identified as the people who make a whole bunch of episodes about this monarchist blogger. Because I was like, I feel like we haven't really talked about him that much. Like obviously he was an inspiration for the stuff we started talking about, but he is
Your
not
wife.
the prime.
Your wife says 40. I can't read it all the way.
43.6%.
Yeah.
So like, again, we were talking about, we had all these different data points of stuff that all connected, that we were like, we were interested in all these different things, and we want to see where all of them connect. We want to take each of these ideas, each of these people, each of these viewpoints, and sort of mash them all up and see what comes out the other side of them. So the monarchist blogger is a significant influence, but I actually haven't read anything of his in maybe like 6 months, apart from doing the live readings. I don't keep up with Gray Mirror, and I don't really find myself that aligned with him. Like I think he's brilliant. I am fascinated by so many of his ideas, and I think that they're crucial, but I don't think they're the end all be all. I don't consider myself a Moldbugian. I appreciate what Moldbug says. I like what he says. His insights are singular. Nobody has quite put together a lot of these ideas like he has. And he's obviously borrowed from a lot of different people, but each of those people was a different perspective, and he put those perspectives together in a new way. And that, to me, that's a new perspective that's very unique. So,
and one of those people was, obviously Hoppe,
right, and Rothbard. He talks about how he's read a lot of Rothbard.
But where Hoppe's thing, he obviously has a lot of like interplay with monarchy, to suddenly kind of dismiss the idea of, or say monarchy sort of offhanded. This is a little bit disingenuous, but anyway, didn't take it personal. Didn't want to particularly like publicly respond and justify or anything like that, because like we said, we're just here doing our thing. We're just trying to meet people with love whenever they want to talk. I don't have the liberty of having a private conversation with Dave, beyond like, I guess I could private message him if I want, but you know what I mean? But not like a conversation. But like, I don't know, it'd be cool. Like, I don't know, somehow, some point, we could kind of like talk. Cause I think the thing that with Dave is like, people just see something in him. It's like, I know there's something in there. I know there's something, you know what I mean? It's just like, I think I joined the inner circle, by the way, to maybe ask him specifically, just like, man, what's up with you and God? Because there's something there, even if even like, I know you're like born Jewish and probably raised Jewish. I don't really know, but good golly, Jordan Peterson seems to have like a real big effect on you. And like, I just wanted to ask that question. And then, I saw him tweet kind of the other day that God was good and all that stuff. It's like, man, where are we going? But he even attracts, people who are sort of like more in line with like, being religious and things like that. So there's just something in Dave and I think there's a lot of people who are pulling for that thing, and that thing is not whatever makes him want to do stuff with the Mises Caucus.
Dave is in demand. People recognize that he is an asset, given his charisma and his wit and his sharp mind and his ability. It's one thing to have a sharp mind, and it's one thing to be able to communicate well, but when you can do both of those together, you automatically become a very high value person. And
but then there's this essence underneath, there's this like, be a good husband, be a good man, be a good father. God is good. Wait, what'd you say? Like that thing combined with somebody who can, has a natural charisma and can, navigate through like real world, situations and command a crowd. Yeah, that's.
I honestly, I feel bad for the guy right now. I mean, I don't feel bad for him because I think he's digging everything that's happening. I think he's absolutely eating it up because I think he lives for this stuff. And I recognize that because I'm kind of the same way. I'm a bit of a glutton for this kind of thing. But
Ooh,
um,
Matthew.
there's a lot of people that are kind of really going after him on this whole like post-libertarian thing. And uh, I mean, I would very much love to be able to sit down and have a conversation with him and hash these sorts of things out. But I understand that there's now history there. There's a thing kind of, and
Yeah, you call him a child predator,
it's
bro. You not
and
remember that?
I
In the audience,
recognize
you
that
remember Matthew calling Dave a child predator? Pretty.
I don't remember that, but yeah. Anyways, dot dot dot. I you know, like I would love to sit down and talk with him and sort of hash this stuff out. And I think from having spent years listening to him, I think if somebody presented this to him in a way that included an incentive for him to I don't want to say come on board because it's not like an incentive for him to include this in his worldview. I think if somebody did that, I have both the belief in the truth and the accuracy of this worldview and the confidence in his intellect and his willingness to do and believe what he knows is true. I think that he's very much a fellow traveler in the direction that we're going. But I don't think that going after him and harassing him and insulting him and calling him out and trying to berate him is gonna do anything but push him in the opposite direction.
Right. Absolutely.
And so that's what I'm saying I'm not trying to be combative. I'm wanting to. I recognize the position he's in, and I empathize with him.
I think another reason why we don't really take the post-libertarian thing, even though I think I don't know who said it first, whoever said it, but is that
I had a very interesting conversation with Buck and Tho about that.
Well, so it doesn't. Yeah, it kind of puts you in the place where you're not libertarian. You have to like leave that and kind of do this. Or Dave has to leave wherever he's at. It's like that's really not what we're saying at all. We're just asking some questions about like about sort of what's going on. And like my biggest like takeaway from the episode with Tho, which I've been meaning to cut up, I just haven't gotten around to it and just like put out clips because like there's some really good stuff in there. But even this stuff with like, the Mises caucus of the Libertarian Party, where they tell you to, they tell you to read more Rothbard because of these ideas and these questions that you're asking. My biggest takeaway is like, I think you guys actually might need to read more Mises, oddly enough, being the Mises caucus.
Funny how that is, huh?
Yeah. And so then just because
how the turntables.
You don't let it would be like a trick sort of to just sort of let these people who, according to Tho, don't really seem to have the best alignment of a world, push you out into something else. So like I don't know, was Hoppe considered like at any point like a post-libertarian, or did he just sort of help refine like the ideology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this idea where it needs to be some like gigantic leap versus just some people who are discussing some issues with like the current ideology or limitations of the current ideology, or like like the path of said idea, which I don't think ever existed. You know what I mean? Beyond Hoppe had what must be done, but like other than that, not a whole bunch of how to.
I think part of the reason that Hoppe only went as far as he has is because he recognized that the time wasn't right, and that this is a very narrow gap that has to be threaded very effectively. You can get really easily carried away and go some bad directions if you half-ass the sort of thing that we're talking about. These are serious subjects, and I think he recognized that and recognized that the time wasn't right, and so there wasn't any utility in him pushing the issue more because the infrastructure wasn't there, the intellectual baseline for it wasn't there. But I think that what's happening is as we're progressing forward, people are more and more starting to wake up to some of these ideas that we're talking about. And I hate the way that I just said that. It's not that people are. It's people are becoming aware of these ideas. It's not that they're waking up. It's they've been awake. They're just looking in one direction, and something has come into their field of view. And this is what happened to all of us. And it just so happened that based on where each of us was looking, it came into our field of view at a different time. And our goal is to just bring this into the field of view of more people, so that more people thinking and focusing in these areas can innovate on this. And Hoppe was one of the first people to see this. And because of him seeing some of this stuff, Moldbug saw it and was able to see more. And I think that Hoppe probably I don't think he would disagree with basically anything that we say. But he hasn't taken those positions publicly necessarily, because for him, there's more utility in just contributing to the conversation what he's contributed. And then more people can fill in and contribute more. That's kind of the way that I've visualized it. So we have a responsibility, to the extent that we talk about these things and it has an impact on other people. We have a responsibility to continue trying to kind of push forward and like innovate in this idea space, and try to come up with ways of continuing to build the road forward. Ultimately, people are going to need to go somewhere. We can't stay at this base camp forever. We can't permanently camp at the base camp. We have to climb to the summit at some point. And so Hoppe was one of the first ones that was kind of like, all right, guys, he's the first one that kind of stood up and stretched and like, took his jacket off and packed it into his pack and put his backpack on. He's like, all right, guys, let's go. And more people are doing that. So I don't know how many different, tortured analogies I can use for this, but well,
one of the contributions that aforementioned Moldbug made was in the beginning of like the Gray Mirror stuff, like the first 3 chapters, I guess, that has some really kind of broad ideas that I think are really worth reading, just in case anyone hasn't. But one of them was that our democracy is not a shocker. In fact, not a democracy. And man, I swear I remember from like somewhere in the 2000s. I don't remember, but it was that was like an article or something like that came out, and I was wondering like where that came from. But just like as it turns out, really our system is more like an oligarchy. But it was like out there in like public, and I don't know if anyone remembers that. It was, I don't know if it was like Newsweek or just like where it was discussed, but I just wonder where that came from and why it was an article. That was just like an aside. But anyway, our democracy is not in fact a democracy, it's an oligarchy. And that the only thing that can replace an oligarchy is an autocracy. And so this is again more dealing with the world that is. So if you take this as a given, the idea of when you say that there just shouldn't be a government, and I'm not saying that libertarians have any say over anything, or anybody has any say over anything for that matter, outside of a very select amount of people. When all you're saying is that, okay, the government just shouldn't exist, period. You're like, let's say you're violating this law. I would take for granted that an autocracy is the only thing that can replace an oligarchy. You're leaving a vacuum, basically, even though you have absolutely no say in what goes on. And so when you leave a vacuum, well, it's usually bad. It's usually bad when you leave a vacuum. And so with that,
are you saying it sucks?
Oh, Matthew, good. It would have been gone for 4 months, but the chemistry is still there. And so, like why someone might dedicate 1,000 episodes to, or even like a couple episodes to like this guy who's presenting these ideas, is sort of, I don't know, seems kind of evident in this clip that I just tweeted today.
So here, let's play it.
So here,
for those of you who haven't seen it yet,
mm-hmm.
or heard it, I should say.
And I'm not exaggerating this. All of you deal internationally. There's a great debate going on whether or not in the 21st century, in the second quarter of the 21st century, can democracies function with things moving so rapidly? And I can tell you, a couple of the folks I've had spent a lot of time with of late, Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi Jinping, they really believe that autocracies are the only way forward because they can act quickly and decisively. It's not a joke. And we're seeing effects of this around the world. And I don't know, it's understandable why the average American wouldn't understand what the consequences of this will be for American security and the willingness of other countries to follow our lead.
Perhaps the thing that jumped out to me the most from that, and I don't know what the question was that he was asked. I don't know what was the prompt for that, but perhaps what stood out to me the most in that was not necessarily, because I mean, this is like you said, this is an idea we've already talked about. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, now they're talking about it publicly. You know, it's like you recognize this trajectory, you recognize this is where it's going. So, you know, it's like, okay, now there we go. All right, we were looking for that. It happened. All right, you know, check that off the calendar and continue forward. What stood out to me was the part where he said the average American wouldn't understand this thing. Because that's not, you don't hear politicians talking that way.
The mask is slipping, bro.
You guys are too stupid to understand this. So I wouldn't expect you to get this complicated reality. That's why I exist. That's why I, your leader, exist. That's someone talking as a leader, as an authority, and not a public servant. So, I mean, again, this shouldn't be surprising. This is part of the trend. This is part of the story. This is the trajectory. This is where it's going to go. Once you realize, once you see that, then you're like, okay, this gives me an idea, sort of. I can kind of map the angle of this trajectory. I can kind of get a feel for how fast things are progressing. And to me, things are progressing pretty goddamn fast. And so when you hear the President of the United States speaking off the cuff about how autocracy is inevitable, because that's what he's saying. He's saying this is an inevitability. These guys have accepted it, and I can't publicly tell you that I've accepted it as well, but I'm priming you. I'm preparing you for this conversation. I'm not saying that's explicitly what's happening to him. He's possessed by a spirit. The spirit functions, and people are animated by that spirit. And that spirit is most able to work most effectively when it's possessing someone who's resisting it the least. And he's an empty vessel who's possessed by this spirit. So the President of the United States is talking about how autocracy is inevitable. Democracy has had its day in court, and it's been found inefficient and ineffective. He didn't say that the things that they like about it are bad. He said the things they like about it are good things. They can act quickly and effectively. He's speaking positively about this thing. It's very clear that's the projection. That's where we're headed. We're headed to where the President of the United States is justifying autocracy. So if you think that there's a political solution to this, if you think this is just a matter of messaging, if this is just a matter of talking people out of participating in the system, the system doesn't care whether you participate with it or not. And if you're going to talk people out of it, you have to truly talk them out of it, not talk them into your own version of it. You have to have somewhere else to point them. You have to have somewhere to direct them where they can do something that is better. And that's not just whatever they want to do. Doing whatever you want to do doesn't protect you from the collapse of an empire. When empires collapse, there are very, very few viable paths to get yourself out of the suction that's created. Here you go, your vacuum. When the vacuum empties and it's filled, you don't want to be crushed in the middle of that process. So this is the way that like we're trying to get people to think. We're trying to get people to recognize the severity of the situation, but at the same time, like this isn't a black pill, this is a white pill, because it should give you extreme clarity of purpose. And for me right now, I kind of have that clarity of purpose, and I'm struggling accepting it. I'm struggling just embracing it and moving forward in that direction. But to segue, as Stevie Boy here, posited two kind of alternative pathways earlier today. He did he did a Twitter poll that he mentioned on the alternate pathways. The Ron Paul route.
If I may interject super quick, like I was talking to, I guess I can call him my spiritual father. Maybe I can. I'll ask. But I was introduced to him by Vin, and he's like someone I've talked about. Man, I can't wait till we talk to this guy, or people can kind of hear this guy. Anyway, I guess him and Vin started a podcast. Apparently, I talked to him this weekend, and kind of in line with the two paths, but not exactly. I'm gonna let people listen to. I haven't listened to it, but I was talking with him on the phone, and I kind of was going through this like two path thing. It wasn't Ron Paul, Jason Stapleton. It was broadly principle and practical. Broadly, and so he goes, man, this is wild. He's like, Vin and I just recorded a podcast about this like 10 minutes ago or something like that. And I guess it's like their most recent episode, but I didn't even know that he did it until I was like talking with him. But he's just someone who's like such a cool guy to listen to. I'm glad that he's out there, and I don't even know the name of the podcast. I don't know what it's called, but
I don't either.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure Vin has tweeted it out, or Cyprian on Twitter, whatever. So if you go look for it, and I'm looking forward to listening to it too. But I just remembered that. But yeah, you can take it back to my Jason Stapleton, Ron Paul.
Okay, so that actually is there's that kind of touches on basically the angle that I was going, and kind of indirectly. So you have these two different paths. You have the Ron Paul and the Jason Stapleton, more or less, and I think that there's a parallel here with the thing that Vin's been talking about a lot lately. And now I haven't actually listened to him specifically when he's done his streams on this specific subject, the subject of protocols over platforms. But I did his Bitcoin Mystery School, and I've listened to him talk about this before, so I understand his point. I just haven't listened to him elaborate on it yet. But basically, the idea is that if you put your faith in platforms, the platforms themselves, you're going to subject yourself to all the corruption that will eventually take them over, because every institution will eventually be corrupted. Every institution except for the Christian church, it will eventually be corrupted. This is a fundamental truth of reality. So the platforms, the idea that you're going to start a revolution and message your way through that revolution, that's a take over the platform mentality. The approach of trying to use a political party to deliver a message to people is ultimately rooted in the idea that you're going to try to save that platform. But that platform is dead. It's not even dying, it's dead. We've talked about this extensively, so I don't need to give all the reasons, all the justifications now. But the political system as a vehicle for messaging and for persuasion is long gone. It's very clear, even to people who may not consciously realize it, subconsciously, they recognize that we're on the short path to war. and there's going to be two sides, and everybody is just picking their side right now. Everyone is subconsciously aligning themselves into one of two camps. This is why you have Reason having these just mind-numbingly bad take after mind-numbingly bad take, because they're clearly advertising which side of the conflict they're going to fall on. Whether they're doing it consciously or not, that's what they're doing. They're signaling which side they're taking. And this should be abundantly apparent to you at this point. If it's not, keep watching for another few weeks. We'll still be here, and you can come back and we'll tell you I told you so. It's very clear that things are splitting, and that there's going to be some sort of major conflict. I don't know if there's going to be a hot war. I don't know if it's going to be a cold war. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I know that the regime is collapsing. The empire is falling apart. And I don't know if that's going to take 5 years. I don't know if that's going to take 50 years. I don't know if it's going to take 150 years. I don't know exactly what's going to replace it. But I know that when a regime collapses, you don't want to be in the middle of it. And the people who will survive and thrive beyond the collapse of the regime. You've got some audio, something going on.
I'm sorry.
It was that, like, the loose cable or something. Yeah. The people, it's not happening right now. Yeah. The people who will survive and thrive through the collapse of the regime will be the people who studied the previous people who survived and thrived through the collapse of a regime. There's these traditions have been passed on through the generations so that future generations are able to benefit from them. And so our goal is not to stop people from doing something. At least that's not my goal. My goal is to try to point people in a better direction, is to try to point people a better way, to convince people that you will benefit more by taking the route that we're describing. And so my goal is not to talk to people who disagree with me. If you disagree with me, that's fine. I don't care. I don't have time for debates. I don't think that debates are productive. There's no reason to debate this kind of thing. If you're interested, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it. But trying to debate is just save that for the next low tide time. So I have other thoughts that I've put together, coming back from this vacation, and I know that Steven's been feeling very pent up and has lots of things on his mind as well.
I released it all on Charlemagne, so it's okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if we're friends, Charlemagne and I now.
You're probably not far off. This sounds like the start of a beautiful relationship, honestly.
Sounds like the start of a podcast.
This is how they all begin. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if you got out everything that you wanted. I know I definitely didn't. There's other thoughts that I still have to. I'm still trying to get straight in my head.
Is just have another episode one of these days.
I think we might have to do that.
Yeah.
I guess we can't solve all the world's problems in one 120-minute session. What you can do, if you want to talk to us when it's not this sort of 120-minute session, you can join our Discord, subscribestar.com/kingpilled. I have a lot of the conversation in there that I need to catch up on because I feel really bad about the lack of interaction that I had there. I just did not expect to be able to spend. I didn't expect to be kept away from my phone as much as I was. But in hindsight, because I was spending all that time with family, I don't feel as bad as I would otherwise. But I still feel bad because I know you guys have spent money to be able to interact with us in that group. So I'll definitely be back in there now going forward. And you guys are very welcome to join if you'd like. I'm going to work on setting something up so that you guys, if you want to give us crypto, you can do that as well. If you just want to tip us or spite fund something or whatever, we're happy to take your money and do just about anything you want us to do. So I just figured I'd slip that in there. You can follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. You can follow Steven's harassment of Charlemagne on Twitter. Just go to @Messina Inc. And then PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Use promo code KING. And I have a lot of, as a last thing, I'll say this. We're going to be doing some fun stuff going forward. We've got some fun guests set up, and we've got a few other projects that I think that we're going to dive into kind of collectively. And I'm still trying to get those straightened out in my head. Some of them I haven't even talked to you about yet, Stephen. You just, I'm just gonna spring them on you at some point, and you're free to play along if you want. But I want to start. We began this podcast as a exploratory endeavor, kind of exploring different ideas, and we didn't really have a clear call to action necessarily. More just like, if you're interested in this stuff, then just come hang out with us. And I want to recapture some of that essence. I have some new ideas that I want to explore, and I want to have anybody who is interested come explore with us. So thanks for sticking with us, for bearing with us the last couple of weeks. We should be back to our regularly scheduled programming, and we've got some fun stuff planned in the near future. So we appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
That's right. We'll be coming to the King-Pilled compound. Matthew's been scanning at locations, the true nature of his trip, and he's decided on Waco, Texas. So
there's even a perfect plot of land out there. There's a little bit of rubble you got to clear out of the way, but they've got a nice big open field, and there's nobody anywhere for a long distance around. So I think things should go well.
Can you imagine?
See